Yemen, it's a country most people couldn't point to on a map. Yet it's home to one of the world's worst humanitarian crises. Years of relentless conflict have ravaged this nation. The images are heartbreaking: crumbling buildings, starving children, a healthcare system on the verge of collapse. This isn't just a story of a forgotten war. This is about human suffering on a massive scale. Over 230,000 people have died. Millions more are displaced, struggling to survive each day. This is a man-made disaster fueled by regional power struggles and international indifference. The conflict in Yemen is complex. There are multiple armed groups, shifting alliances, and external actors meddling in its affairs. But one thing is clear: ordinary Yemenis are paying the heaviest price. They are trapped in a cycle of violence and despair with no end in sight. The US has been deeply involved in Yemen for years. It has provided weapons, logistical support, and intelligence to the Saudi-led coalition. This coalition has been fighting the Houthi rebels, who control much of northern Yemen. Recently, the US took a drastic step. It launched airstrikes against the Houthis, marking a significant escalation of its military involvement. This move has been condemned by many as counterproductive and likely to worsen the humanitarian crisis. Adding fuel to the fire, the US redesignated the Houthis as a foreign terrorist organization. This controversial decision has drawn sharp criticism from aid groups and human rights organizations. They argue that it will hinder humanitarian aid delivery and push the country further into chaos. The humanitarian situation in Yemen is nothing short of catastrophic. The country is on the brink of famine. Millions are struggling to feed themselves and their families. Clean water is scarce. Diseases are spreading like wildfire. The UN has described Yemen as the world's worst humanitarian crisis, and it's only getting worse. The recent escalation in violence, coupled with the foreign terrorist organization designation, threatens to completely cripple the country's already fragile economy. The FTO designation could have devastating consequences. It could collapse the banking sector, making it nearly impossible for aid organizations to operate. It could also impact remittances, a lifeline for millions of Yemenis who rely on money sent from relatives abroad. Peace talks have been ongoing for years, but progress has been frustratingly slow. The conflict is mired in a complex web of political and economic interests. Each party has its own agenda, and trust is in short supply. The recent escalation in violence and the FTO designation have further complicated the peace process. The Houthis feel under attack and are less likely to negotiate from a position of weakness. Meanwhile, the Yemeni government, backed by the Saudi-led coalition, seems intent on pursuing a military victory. The international community has been largely ineffective in brokering a lasting peace. The UN has been criticized for its perceived bias and lack of leverage over the warring parties. The US, while wielding significant influence, has prioritized its own strategic interests over the needs of the Yemeni people. Section 5. The FTO designation. Fueling the fire. The decision to redesignate the Houthis as an FTO has been met with widespread condemnation. Critics argue that it will achieve little beyond exacerbating the humanitarian crisis and pushing the Houthis further away from the negotiating table. They argue that the designation will have a chilling effect on humanitarian aid delivery. Banks and other financial institutions will be reluctant to do business with organizations operating in Houthi-controlled areas, fearing US sanctions. This could disrupt the flow of essential goods and services, putting millions of lives at risk. Moreover, the designation is likely to fuel resentment and anger among the Yemeni population. It could be used by the Houthis to rally support and further demonize the US. This could push the country further into violence and instability. Section 6. Navigating the labyrinth. Expert opinions on Yemen. Experts on Yemen are united in their concern over the deteriorating situation. They warn that the current trajectory will lead to even greater suffering and instability. They stress the need for a fundamental shift in approach, one that prioritizes diplomacy and humanitarian aid over military solutions. Afra Nasser of the Arab Center argues for a comprehensive approach that addresses the root causes of the conflict. She emphasizes the importance of inclusive dialogue and addressing the grievances of all Yemenis, not just the warring parties. Baras Shiban of the Reprieve US highlights the lack of trust between the parties and the need for confidence-building measures. He stresses the importance of accountability for human rights abuses and violations of international law. Section 7. Regional ripples. Maritime security at risk. The conflict in Yemen has significant regional implications, particularly for maritime security in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. These waterways are vital shipping routes for global trade, including oil and gas. The Houthis have repeatedly attacked ships in these waters, raising concerns about the safety of navigation and the potential for a wider conflict. These attacks have targeted vessels linked to Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the United States, highlighting the complex geopolitical dynamics at play. Controlling these strategic waterways is crucial for effective negotiations and a lasting peace. The international community must work together to ensure freedom of navigation and prevent further escalation in the region. Section 8. A glimmer of hope. The Aden Dialogues. Amidst the despair, there have been some glimmers of hope. In January 2025, a group of Yemeni civil society representatives met in Aden for a series of dialogues. They discussed a range of issues, including political inclusivity, economic stabilization, and security sector reform. These dialogues, while limited in scope, represent a rare example of Yemenis coming together to find common ground. The participants emphasized the need for structured dialogue mechanisms, UN and international support, and capacity building for local NGOs. While these dialogues are a positive step, they are just a drop in the ocean. Much more needs to be done to translate these discussions into concrete actions and build a sustainable peace. Section 9. A call to action towards a just and lasting peace. The crisis in Yemen is a stain on the conscience of humanity. It is a testament to our collective failure to prevent and resolve conflict. The time for empty rhetoric and half-hearted measures is long gone. The international community must act decisively and with a sense of urgency to end the suffering of the Yemeni people. First and foremost, there must be an immediate ceasefire. All parties to the conflict must cease hostilities and commit to a political solution. The UN Security Council must exercise its authority to enforce the ceasefire and hold those who violate it accountable. Second, the international community must prioritize humanitarian aid and ensure unimpeded access to all those in need. The FTO designation must be reversed, as it will only exacerbate the humanitarian crisis. Finally, there must be a renewed push for a negotiated settlement. This will require sustained diplomatic engagement, regional cooperation, and a willingness to address the legitimate grievances of all parties.